They say a new life is a chance to rewrite your story. For me, it was more than a rewrite. It was an entirely new book, a bestseller with a gilded cover and an endless supply of crisp, blank pages. A decade ago, I was Eleanor Vance, a woman suffocating in a life of faded dreams and faded dreams. Now I am Elena Dubois, a celebrated art consultant with a penthouse in Tribeca and a fortune built on a lie. The lie was simple, really. I was dead. A tragic kayaking accident on Lake Champlain. A body never recovered. The perfect escape. My new life was everything I had ever wanted. The days were filled with gallery openings, high-stakes auctions, and evenings spent with people who understood the value of ambition. My new husband, David, was a successful real estate mogul who saw me not as a burden, but as an asset. He admired my sharp wit and my even sharper business sense. I had everything: the luxury, the freedom, the respect I craved. I had finally shed the skin of the woman I was meant to be and became the woman I was always meant to be. The only loose end was the family I left behind. An unambitious, kind husband and a 5-year-old son named Leo. They were part of the old life, the one I had to burn down to build my new empire. I never looked back. There was no room for sentimentality in my plan. Tonight, as I was sipping a glass of Bordeaux, gazing at the glittering skyline of New York City, a knock at my door shattered my tranquility. It was my doorman, holding a tablet with a video call from a young man who looked hauntingly familiar. My heart, a muscle I thought had long since atrophied, fluttered. It was Leo, my son. My son, now 15, stood before me, his face a mix of pain and fury. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "everyone thinks you're dead." And I smiled, because that was always the plan. If you're captivated by this story and want to see how this plan unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next chapter. His words hung in the air, a ghost from a past I had meticulously buried. I didn't feel fear. I felt a surge of pride, a cold, clinical satisfaction. The plan had worked perfectly for a decade. He was proof of that. My heartless pragmatism was a triumph. I took another sip of wine, the bitter notes a perfect reflection of the moment. I had to handle this with the same precision I had used to orchestrate my escape. I had a life to protect, a life I had earned with my cunning. I looked at his face on the tablet screen, the same deep-set brown eyes, and the determined jawline I knew so well. He had grown into a handsome young man, a stark reminder of the time that had passed. I could tell he was trying to understand, to reconcile the woman he saw on the screen with the mother he mourned. He was looking for a reason, for an explanation, for anything that could make sense of my actions. I would not give it to him. I thought back to the night of the accident, the rented kayak, the carefully crafted note I left for my husband Mark, the staged scene on the riverbank. I had chosen Lake Champlain for a reason. The sheer size and depth made a body search a near impossibility. I knew the police would eventually give up, and the narrative of a woman lost at sea would be easier for my family to accept than the truth of my abandonment. I had to disappear, to vanish without a trace, to create a story so tragic that no one would dare question it. My new identity as Elena Dubois was born from a forged passport and a new life in Europe for a few years, before I eventually returned to the US with a fresh start, a new name, and a new credit score. I wasn't just faking a death, I was building a new person from the ground up, with a background and history so compelling that no one would ever suspect the truth. Leo's accusation was just a minor hiccup, a moment of inconvenience in a life of pure triumph. My old life was a gray canvas. The air always smelled of damp earth and stale coffee. I was a talented painter, but my talent felt wasted. My husband, Mark, was a good man. He was honest, kind, and loved me with a simple, uncomplicated love I couldn't return. But he was also content. He was happy with his job as a high school art teacher, happy with our small house in the suburbs, happy to have a son and a wife and a life that was neat and predictable. And that was the problem. I wasn't content. I was restless. I needed more than a simple life. I needed to see the world, to experience the thrill of the chase, to live among people who understood that art wasn't just a hobby, but a commodity. I wanted to be in a world where money was a tool, not a constant source of worry. The thought of spending the rest of my life in that small house, of watching my dreams wither on the vine, was more terrifying than the thought of leaving my family. Mark was blind to my ambition. He would come home from work, kiss me on the forehead, and talk about his day. He'd tell me about his students and their progress. I would nod and smile, all the while feeling my heart constrict, my spirit shrinking to fit the confines of his small world. I tried to talk to him about my dreams, my desire to move to the city, to start my own art consulting business. He would just smile and say, "Maybe someday, honey. We're happy now, aren't we?" His contentment was my prison. The thought of leaving everything behind, of faking my death, was the only thing that kept me sane. It was a fantasy I had nurtured for years, and one day, the fantasy became a plan. I didn't see it as an act of betrayal. I saw it as an act of self-preservation. I had to sacrifice the life I was supposed to have for the life I was meant to have. The guilt was a price I was willing to pay. And for a decade, I didn't feel it. I decided to handle Leo myself. The next day, I had him flown to New York on a private jet and put him up in a luxurious suite at a 5-star hotel. When he arrived, his eyes, wide with a mixture of awe and resentment, scanned the opulence of the hotel lobby. I met him in the penthouse suite, a space larger than the entire house we once shared. He stood there, a young man from the suburbs, in a world I had created for myself. "This is all yours, Leo," I said, gesturing to the sprawling room with a panoramic view of the city. "Your new life can start right here. You can have everything you've ever wanted." I didn't offer a hug or an apology. I offered a solution, a transaction. I thought that was what he wanted. I believed everyone had a price, and I was willing to pay his. I pulled out a black card. "This has no limit. Go. Buy whatever you want. Live the life you were meant to have." He looked at the card, then at me. His face, once filled with awe, was now a mask of disgust. "You think this is what I want?" he said, his voice cold. "You think money can fix this? You left a trail of destruction behind you, and you think a credit card can wipe it all clean?" He held the card in his hand, a flimsy piece of plastic against the weight of his grief. I didn't understand his reaction. He was a boy from a poor neighborhood. I was offering him a golden ticket. Why wouldn't he take it? I tried to explain my rationale, the need for freedom, the ambition that drove me. He cut me off. "You didn't just leave a family, Mom. You destroyed a man who loved you. You broke his spirit. You broke me." His words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were true, but because they were inconvenient. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Every like and comment brings us closer to a new episode. Leo's words echoed in the silence of the penthouse. "You broke him, Dad. He fell apart after you died." I felt a flicker of something, a momentary discomfort I hadn't experienced in years. I had always assumed Mark would move on, that he was resilient enough to survive. After all, he was Mark, the man who was content with his simple life. But Leo's words painted a different picture. He couldn't work. The grief, it consumed him. He lost his job. He sold the house. We moved into a tiny apartment, a shoebox. He'd just sit there for hours, staring at a picture of you, of the three of us. He'd tell me stories about you, how you were the love of his life, how he couldn't live without you. Leo's voice was low, filled with a profound sadness. He didn't just lose his wife, Mom. He lost himself. He was a shell of the man he used to be. I felt a slight tremor in my hands. The Bordeaux glass felt heavy. I didn't feel guilt, not exactly. It was more of a jarring recognition that my grand performance had a much wider, more devastating ripple effect than I had anticipated. I had calculated the risk to my own life, to my own happiness, but I hadn't accounted for the human cost of my actions. I had always believed my actions were a victimless crime, a victimless escape. "He's better now," Leo continued, "but he's still not the same. He's still broken. And now I know why. He didn't just lose you to an accident. He lost you to a selfish choice." He looked at me, his brown eyes filled with an unsettling mixture of sorrow and a chilling, cold judgment I never thought I would see in my son. He had seen the truth, and he was not afraid to speak it. My carefully constructed facade of cold, elegant detachment was cracking. Leo's eyes held no warmth, no love, only the cold, hard glint of a truth I had spent a decade running from. "I didn't find you by accident, Mom," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I hired a private investigator." The words hit me like a physical blow. a private investigator. My perfect, foolproof plan suddenly seemed so flimsy. I had a new name, a new life, a new identity, but I had left a trail. The bank accounts I had opened under a false name, the small art sales I had made in Europe before returning to the States, the tiny, almost imperceptible threads of my old life that I had carelessly abandoned. They all led to me. "He's been watching you for months," Leo continued, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "He knows your real name. He knows about David, about your gallery, about your fortune. He has everything. He's been gathering evidence, piecing together the last 10 years of your life, from the moment you left to the moment you smiled at me on that video call." A sense of panic, cold and sharp, seized my heart. This wasn't a child's tantrum. This was a calculated attack. My son was not here for reconciliation or money. He was here for retribution. I had misjudged him completely. I thought he was a naive boy, a sad echo of his father, but he was my son, and he had inherited my ambition, my ruthlessness, my cold, sharp intelligence. He was using my own tactics against me. "What do you want?" I asked, the words a desperate whisper. "What is your price?" "My price?" He scoffed. "My price is justice. You didn't just break our hearts, Mom. You broke the law. You can't run from this anymore. We're going to make sure you pay for everything you've done." The coldness in his eyes was a mirror of my own. He was the consequence I never saw coming. The knock on my door was polite, but the sound of it made my heart pound. It was David, my husband, his face a mask of stone. He held a thick manila envelope in his hand. "I've just been served with a subpoena," he said, his voice flat. He looked at me, a cold emptiness in his eyes I had never seen before. "It's about a lawsuit. Something about a woman named Eleanor Vance. Apparently, she faked her death a decade ago." My meticulously crafted facade crumbled. "David, I can explain," I stammered, my voice sounding foreign even to me. "It's a long story." "I'm sure it is," he said, his voice laced with venom. "And I'm sure it has something to do with the private investigator who's been asking questions about you. The one who told me you're not a Dubois, and your past is a complete fabrication." He tossed the envelope onto the table. It landed with a sickening thud. "Tell me, Elena, or whatever your name is, was any of it real? The love we shared? The plans we made?" I tried to rationalize my actions, to paint a picture of a desperate woman escaping a life of misery. "I did it for myself, David. I was a prisoner. I had to break free." He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "A prisoner? You abandoned your husband and your child. You let them believe you were dead. You're not a victim. You're a monster. A cold, calculating monster." He picked up the framed photo of us, a memory of a perfect moment in our perfect life, and threw it against the wall. It shattered into a million pieces. The glass shards on the floor were a perfect metaphor for my life. The illusion of perfection was gone. He looked at me with pure disgust. My perfect life, my new identity, my carefully constructed world, all of it was over. Don't let the drama end here. Subscribe to our channel and join us for the rest of this incredible story. The following days were a blur of lawyers, financial audits, and bitter, ugly accusations. David, it turned out, was even more cunning than I was. He had secured his own assets, and a significant portion of my fortune was tied to investments he controlled. He had cut me off, leaving me with only the cash in my personal accounts. My credit cards were canceled, my bank accounts were frozen, and the luxurious Tribeca penthouse was now a cold, empty prison. The news broke. A local journalist, a former colleague of my ex-husband Mark, had picked up the story. "Wealthy socialite exposed as faking her own death," the headlines screamed. My picture, a decade younger, was plastered across every news channel, every website. The public, who had once admired Elena Dubois, now reviled Eleanor Vance. I was no longer a success story. I was a pariah. I was alone. The friends I had made in the art world, the people who had toasted my ambition, vanished overnight. The clients who had once lined up to work with me now treated me like a ghost, a public embarrassment. I tried to reach out to them, to explain my side of the story, but my calls and emails were ignored. They didn't see a woman who had fought for her freedom. They saw a liar, a manipulator, a cruel and selfish woman who had abandoned her family for money. The shame was a physical weight on my shoulders. a constant, crushing pressure. I had everything I ever wanted, and in a single day, I lost it all. My new identity, my new life. It was all a house of cards. My perfect, foolproof plan had come undone, not because of a mistake I made in the past, but because of the one person I had never accounted for, my own son. The civil lawsuit was a slow, agonizing public spectacle. My ex-husband, Mark, with Leo by his side, filed a lawsuit for emotional distress and financial damages. I was forced to face them in court, to sit across from the man I had abandoned and the boy I had betrayed. Mark, once a kind and gentle soul, now looked at me with a profound sadness. Leo, my son, looked at me with a cold, unwavering stare, his face a perfect echo of my own. The lawyers were vicious. They dissected my life, my motivations, my lies. They showed the jury the photographs of my staged death, the fraudulent documents, and the evidence of the luxurious life I had built on the pain of my family. My once impenetrable plan was now a flimsy, transparent lie, and my once cunning mind was now a source of public shame. The verdict was swift and decisive. The jury found me guilty. The judge ordered me to pay a significant amount in damages, so large it would wipe out any remaining fortune I had. I watched as the money I had worked so hard to accumulate, the money that had been my ticket to freedom, was seized to compensate my ex-husband and son for the decade of pain and suffering I had caused them. I was left with nothing. The Tribeca penthouse was gone. The gallery was gone. The life I had built for myself was a distant, bitter memory. I was back where I started, living in a small, cramped apartment, the same kind of life I had once despised. But this time, I was alone. I had no one to blame but myself, no one to share the burden of my defeat. I had run from my past, and now my past had returned to collect its debt. I sit in this small, lonely apartment, the walls a blank canvas that I no longer have the heart to paint. The only color in this gray world comes from the television screen. It's a local news channel, and a familiar face flashes on the screen. It's Leo, my son. He's standing in front of a brand new community center, a foundation he's named after his late mother, the Eleanor Vance Foundation. The banner reads, "The irony is a physical punch to my gut." He is being interviewed, his face beaming with pride and humility. "We wanted to create something good from all the pain," he says. "My father and we've used the settlement money to build a safe space for families dealing with abandonment. It's a place for healing, for support, for new beginnings." The reporter smiles and praises him as a hero. My heart, once a cold and hardened stone, aches with a sharp foreign pain. I watch him on the screen, a man I created, a man who is using my mistakes to do good in the world. He has taken the wreckage of my life and built something beautiful from it. I, on the other hand, am left with nothing but the bitterness of my failure. My perfect plan led to my perfect downfall. I am a ghost, a public disgrace, a pariah in a world I once ruled. The world thinks Eleanor Vance is a hero who left a legacy of good in her community. But I am still here, a prisoner in a life of my own making, forever trapped by the choices I made. My ambition, my cunning, my ruthlessness, they were not my keys to freedom, but the shackles that bound me to a life I can no longer escape. My son found a way to win, and I, the master manipulator, the great architect of my own destiny, am left with a hollow victory, a life that is empty of everything but the profound loneliness I created for myself. If you want to dive deeper into stories of human complexity, betrayal, and unexpected consequences, subscribe to our channel and leave a comment with your thoughts on Eleanor's choices. Your feedback helps us create more content you'll love.